Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining for our fourth of 4 shiurim in our series of Agadah, learning Agadah, of meaning making in an uncertain world. We've been learning Agadot that have themes of the rabbis dealing with uncertainty. We've seen different rabbinic responses of how to deal with uncertainty, different kinds of uncertainty. The shir that we're going to learn tonight, the Gemara we're learning, is from Avodah Zarah Daf Chet Amud Aleph. And we are learning it because it is relevant to the holiday coming up this week. Hanukkah begins this week, and we are learning about Adam HaRishon and the Primordial Hanukkah. Okay, so like the origins of the 8-day winter holiday of sharing light in the darkness. The reason for the season. Yes, thank you, Nathan. So to open up our shir, we're going to see a Mishnah in Avodah Zarah, the version of the story in the Yerushalmi, and then compare that story to how the Bavli, which is was edited later, reworks the text in order to kind of shape the narrative and frame the narrative with overarching theological themes. I want to give credit where credit is due. I first learned this text with my chavruta at Yeshivat Maharat, Rabbi Tali Adler, and that's where these ideas and this source sheet come from, and she is credited on the bottom. You can also Google a bunch of her Torah. She's phenomenal. Credit to my chavruta. Okay, so the idea of a holiday of light in the winter is not unique to the Jewish tradition. Right, and we see as we, I don't know if anyone here knows me personally, but I like the lights that go up around this time of year, because I see it as a religious response, or at least okay. And we're going to talk about the interplay between a religious response and a natural intuitive response, and what might be between the two. But I see it as a natural or religious response to the shortening of the days, the increasing of the night, the increasing of the darkness. And I kind of love that, right? I know that we have our Hanukkah, we have our 8-day light celebration, and there are also all these twinkle lights going up all around that kind of echo that theme of we need more light in the world. We're feeling the darkness, we're feeling the cold, and this is our response. So we're going to look at the rabbis dealing with this tension, and the rabbi and I, Rabbi Walkenfeld and I, deal with this on the podcast this week. Shout out for the straw hat. We had a slight debate over this text, and we'll see where everyone weighs in and who wins in that debate at the end. So you guys better be on my side. No pressure. I'm not going to tell you what side I'm on yet. But for Adam HaRishon, we're going to look at his response to the first winter, right? The first time that humankind in the form of Adam HaRishon experiences the changing of the season that he's never experienced before. Okay, so we're going to read the text. The Mishnah of Avodah Zarah actually mentions the two holidays that are not Jewish, that are around the solstice. These are the festivals of the star worshipers we have in our first source, Kalenda and Saturnalia. Okay, if you go down with me to the bottom of the sheet, and we have an explanation of Kalendis. I don't speak Greek. Okay, the Provençal Kalendis or Kalenos, the Polish Kalenda, right? Lots of different versions of this holiday. They're all derived from the Latin calende, the called. The same word from which calendar is derived. The kalends is the first or the first day of January. Is a time celebrated with many festive customs. Kalends is also a general term for the first day of each Roman month, signifying the start of a new month cycle. Okay, so that's the leading up to January 1st, Kalends, this festival of lights. I shared the ASBI website info on my class, not the source sheet. Thank you, Benjamin. Share again. Copy. Please excuse this interruption. Okay, now in the chat. Okay, try again. Does that work? Looks like
we got it. The screen share is the website. The screen share is not.
Here's the website. Ah, Llama. Okay. Sorry, I'll reshare. On my screen, it is displaying as my source sheet. So I'll try that again. How about now? Better?
Perfect.
Good. Okay. I was just reading aloud. So that was these two things that are mentioned by these two holidays, which are mentioned by the mission of Avodah Zarah. And again, they're mentioned in Avodah Zarah. They are idolatrous holidays. Okay. And we're going to talk about, again, comparison to our non-idolatrous holiday. So Kalendis is the one is up to January 1st. Is from January 1st for that following 8 days. And then we have Saturna, counting 8 days from the beginning of Saturnalia to the end of Brumalia, a month-long celebration ending in December 24th. Saturnalia was celebrated the last week of Brumalia from December 17th to 23rd in the Roman calendar. Okay, so they're talking about these holidays, which also centered around the shortening of the days, going towards the shortest day, and then coming out of. But that's how the Gemara is going to discuss it, right? And the 8 days coming out of the darkest night, right, as the light starts to slowly increase. So, Mishnah and Avodah Zarah, these are idolatrous holidays. Now let's see how the Yerushalmi understands the origin of these holidays around the shortening and the lengthening of days. My mic became quiet. Can you guys hear me? No. What? Rough.
Well, I can hear you.
You can hear me.
It is quieter, but I can
What
still
is
hear
it?
you.
I have not touched or changed anything.
I can hear fine.
It's better now.
I didn't do anything, but I'm glad to hear. Okay, here's the Yerushalmi. Again, earlier reworking an earlier Talmud than the Babli, which has more time to be edited, more generations that it's worked on, so the Babli will be more developed. Let's see the text inside. Rav says, Kalends was established by Adam HaRishon. Okay, let's get inside the head of Adam HaRishon. When Adam HaRishon saw that night was lengthening, he said, woe to me, lest the one about whom it is written, he shall wound your head and you shall wound his heel. Okay, does anyone recognize this pasuk? Hu yishufcha rosh vata tishufenu akev. Anyone recognize the snake? The snake in the Garden of Eden will come to bite me. And he says, maybe it's because of my sin, right? I did something wrong. And that's why the light is diminishing, right? It's the first time he's experiencing this ever, right? In the history of humankind. He's like, oh, I must have done something wrong. It must be because of the sin. And I said, surely in darkness he shall envelop me. Okay, choshech yishufeni. Okay, surely in darkness, the snake shall envelop me, or either the darkness shall envelop me. I'm going to ask you in a second what you think Adam's fear here is. And when he sees the day was lengthening, he says, Kalendes, Kalondio, or Kalodiam. You have a note down here of what exactly is the exclamation of Adam HaRishon when he sees the light is not gone and is increasing again. He says, highest beauty. It's an expression of praise, meaning either God is good or proclaim the day. Okay, he's excited, right? He's happy. He says, praise God, which seems to, okay, so what do we think is going on in this story? Let's get on in the head of Adam HaRishon. What is he afraid of when he sees the night encroaching, when he sees darkness encroaching? So you can take a look at
That he's being punished for a sin.
Okay, he thinks he's being punished for the sin. And what does he think is going to happen?
Well, I'm assuming he's scared that it'll keep happening, keep going.
Okay.
Whatsoever left.
Maybe he thinks that the darkness will envelop him, right? So if we look at this pasuk, so that's one read of it. I wanted to lead you to a different read. But we can look at that pasuk inside now that you've said that, Ezra. So it says "Achoshech yishufeni," right? That darkness will envelop me. What would be another read of what he is afraid of here? What's going to happen in the darkness? What's he afraid of?
The world will end.
You think the world will end? Proof text? Sorry, this is not Sepharia. Surely the darkness will hide me, light will come night around me. Okay, maybe Adam HaRishon thinks the world will end. He's going to be going back to Tohu Vavohu, right? God created the world. God, now Adam HaRishon messed up. He sinned, and now that's what's going to happen to the world. Chaos. What else could be his fear here? I'm going to scroll back up.
I understand it as the world will remain as it is, but there'll be no more light.
The world will remain as it is, but there'll be no more light.
Day will end. It gets shorter and shorter until
We're going to have to live in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's terrifying, right? Everything that you all said is terrifying. Either he thinks the world's going to end great, like I had my day, it was wonderful, and now I sinned and it's all over, or the world itself I will live in darkness forever, because he doesn't know what's going to happen next, right? You think logically, he doesn't know. I'd say also here there might be a fear of like the snake coming to bite him in the darkness. He's afraid of the monsters in the dark. Which is kind of, it makes sense. It makes sense that he would have this fear. It's something that we would experience ourselves. If we never saw daylight increasing again, we never experienced the change of the seasons. Let's take a look at the Bavli. Now that we've seen this inside in the Yerushalmi, the earlier version, let's go to the Bavli and see how the Bavli reworks the story. We're going to read it through and compare. So here are some of my Chavruta questions. I think we already hit all of them, except for what do you think interests the rabbis about Kalenda and Saturna, which they talk about in the Mishnah? Why do they bother to then discuss it in the Gemara and say like, oh, it was a Adam HaRishon? Why are they interested in it? Why is it in our Mishnah? Discussed in the Gemara. Interesting question, not interesting question. Thoughts? Okay, we can set it aside for now. I'd say there's something interesting here about they're looking around them and saying, oh, all these other traditions have holidays around the shortening of the days and the lengthening of the days. They're celebrating around solstice. What makes us different, right? Are we doing the same thing as them? Right? Is that possible? Right? Maybe there's a little bit of fear here. Like, are we just like them? So that was our debate a little bit in the podcast where I said, well, I kind of love what we're going to see is the trajectory here of Chazal reading nature as miraculous. Okay, that's what we're going to end up at. Right, they're taking something that's a natural thing and something any human would experience, a universal experience, right? Fear of the encroaching darkness and celebration when light starts to come back, right? They take that and they say, well, that's actually a miracle, okay? And there's something beautiful about just the celebration of the nature for what it is, and developing sensitivity to it. But I think the rabbis are looking at these holidays and saying, well, are we that different from them? And what makes our holiday not idolatrous? Okay, so let's take a look. Let's take a look. The Bavli in Avodah Zarah Aleph says the following. Gemara. Amara Hanan Barava Kalenda Chet Yamim Achar Tkufa Saturna Chet Yamim Lifnei Tkufa. The calendar is kept on the 8 days following the solstice, Saturnalia on the 8 days preceding the solstice. And this is a mnemonic. Okay, so we have a siman, a mnemonic device. The rabbis tell the story, Tanu Rabbanan. Here's our story, but in the Bavli version. And we're looking for differences and or familiar phrases that we're trying to be sensitive to. Again, taking all of our themes from our previous classes. Listen with a literary ear. I said literary eye in other classes, but have a literary ear now. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan. Because when Adam HaRishon saw the day getting gradually shorter, He says, woe is me, perhaps I have sinned. Oili shema bishvili shesarachti, olam chashuch ba'adi. So the world is becoming dark because of me. The choser l'tohu vavohu, and is going to be returned to chaos. So now, the fear that you guys were saying was hidden in the other story is stated explicitly here. Maybe it's going to return to chaos. Like maybe that's just how it works. V'zohi mita shenitkansa alai min hashamayim, and that's the death that was declared upon me from heaven, right? The God said, right, eventually you're going to die now, right? Women get pangs of childbirth, and humankind gets death. So maybe this is the death that God was talking about. Amad v'yashav. So what does he do in response? Amad v'yashav chet yamim mita'anit b'tfilah. Okay, a very kind of religious response, right? He sits 8 days fasting and praying, right? Maybe I sinned, so I need to do tshuva, right? So he sits and he fasts. As soon as he saw that Tevet was coming, right, and the days were getting, as the days following the solstice, and the day was getting longer, Amar, this must be the way of the world, that the days get shorter and shorter, and then they stop getting shorter and they get longer, right? So maybe that's just the way of the world. Halach v'asa shmone yamim tovim. So then he goes and he makes an 8-day holiday. Next year, and when he observed it next year, he made both of the 8 days 8-day festivals. So both the 8 days leading up to solstice and the 8 days following solstice into festivals. Hukvam l'shem shamayim, adds the Gemara. Adam HaRishon made these 2 8-day holidays surrounding the solstice l'shem shamayim, for God. Ve'em kvaum l'shem avodat kochavim. But they, who's they?
The star worshippers.
The star worshippers, okay, the Greeks, okay, the Kalenda and Saturna, they were made for l'shem avodat kochavim. So we should know, clearly, the end of this Gemara, right, our holiday is not like their holiday. Okay, let's analyze this story, having now read it together. So the Bavli reworks this story. What are some differences that you notice between the Bavli story and the Yerushalmi story? Anything, throw it out there. Throw it in the chat if I can open the chat. I got one chat. Anyone, differences that you notice between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi?
He has that holiday that he makes up in the Bavli.
He has a holiday that he makes up. He says that the next day he makes it into a holiday. Say more. What's the nature of this holiday and what's different about it?
It doesn't mention it in the other one, right? This is like I guess it's a fast the first year and then a holiday the second time.
Okay, the first time his reaction is to fast and pray because he's in distress, right? Like it's a religious response that we maintain till today, right? Like declaring a ta'anit, and he's in distress. The next year he creates a holiday. Now, what's the holiday that he creates? Is it the same as our Hanukkah? Different? I know Carly made a comment too. I'm gonna get to it in a second. Same, different than our holiday? Am I covering up the text for you guys, or can you see it? Same or different from our holiday, the holiday that he makes?
It's a little vague.
It's a little vague. Okay, what do you mean?
Because he, where's the text again? So it says that he makes a holiday, and the implication is it's our holiday, but it's not clear that it's the same holiday. It happens.
Okay, you're saying maybe it doesn't have the trappings of our holiday for sure, right?
Yeah, because it does have the same length.
Okay, but it seems like he's also making both sets of 8 days into holidays.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Right? 8 and 8. Why is that a problem? Why is that a problem?
Well, as a matter of fact, I think when the first temple
or do
was
we want to wonder where those other 8 days went and why we got kicked out of another holiday?
I mean, it's not Hanukkah then, if it's 16 days. That's all. Yeah.
Okay, it's not what we're used to if it's different.
But in fact, in the dedication of the temple, there's the week of Sukkot, and then the week before that, also. It's like
Parallels
not
to
just
Sukkot,
twice as long
100%.
in that period, and likewise here, maybe Hanukkah is twice as long. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, parallels to Sukkot and the maybe like dedication of the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, so what other differences are we noticing? Carly says that the reaction that Adam HaRishon is different, that has in our story in the Bavli, is different than in the Yerushalmi. Say more, Carly. You said fearful reaction versus celebratory reaction. Might you unmute? Unless you do not want to share. Yeah, I was asking you to say more. Okay, so there's a celebratory reaction in the Yerushalmi, and we're noting that's the next year, right? When he's certain of what's happening, right? He's like, okay, now I get it. What else is part of his reaction? Right? He doesn't say, oh, now I get it. God did something really wondrous here. He says, oh, Mina go shalom. That's nature. Okay? It's not exactly, and it even seems interestingly, right, not the Kalandio, right, like the kind of like God is great praise that he gives in the Yerushalmi, which says like, oh, this is God, and God's taking care, and God is doing something miraculous here and making sure the world doesn't get destroyed. Interesting difference in reaction when he says, Mina go shalom. Okay, so any other noticings that we're going to do of the text, you as readers, before I move to my little spiel comparing the two?
Well, the Yerushalmi is just 1 year, and the Bavli goes and continues it on as a lesson learned over the course.
The Bavli takes it and says, okay, and this is the origin story for our holiday, and Adam HaRishon made this in reaction to understanding that this was the way of the world. And he did it l'shem shamayim, says that, right? It's a continuing celebration. Other thoughts?
In the in the Talmud Yerushalmi, it just feels much more visceral. There's an actual snake coming at him.
Okay, yeah, and
in the Talmud Bavli, it's just like, oh, like I'm afraid of chaos. Like it's much more abstract.
Interesting, right? I think there are that is a distinct difference, but the crowd didn't seem to feel it, right? So that's okay, right? We can have our reading of the Yerushalmi that is saying we're also afraid of the darkness, but I think, right, as Miriam's saying, right, in the Yerushalmi there's this fear of monsters in the dark, and here it's like it's the reaction to the darkness itself, the encroaching darkness. And I'm gonna point out some other. It'd be really useful if you have the sheet open in front of you, because I'm not going to be scrolling as much. It'd be just useful if you have it as I point out some other, and you can flip back and forth. All right. Okay. So also in the Bavli story, as in general, like there are more details, and that's what happens between the Yerushalmi and the Bavli. And when the Bavli reworks something, it becomes more of a narrative than the Yerushalmi. Okay, so the Bavli kind of slows down the process of Adam noticing the night gradually lengthening and the days shortening, right? Yom shemitma'et veholech. Okay, we're listening to that phrase, mitma'et veholech, gets lessened, ma'at, and continues, right? He notices it's not on a daily basis, but he notices maybe, oh, Shabbat's a little earlier this week. That's interesting, right? Oh, it keeps getting earlier. Oh, shoot. Candlelighting was, wow, Daddy, you won't understand how early candlelighting gets here in Chicago. It is crazy. It's just not something that we experience in New York. I think it was like 4:01 this week or 3:15. Yeah, it was insane. So I was like, wow, 4:01. I'm noticing little by little, week by week, it's getting shorter. And if you're the first person in the world to ever experience this, you think, wait, the day's just going to get shorter until there's no day left, and there's no way I can make it stop. And right, he can count it out week by week to calculate, okay, when's the darkness just going to come and be here forever? Right? That's what he could do as we right. Okay, so and the truth is, right, there isn't anything super intuitive except for that we notice and know about the cycles of the world, but there's nothing intuitive to the first man to think, hey, the world works in cycles instead of straight lines, right? You think about the experience of kids, right? When they're experiencing an emotion, and they're just in it, and they're like, don't know that that'll ever end. Like, when will they stop being sad or angry or hungry, or, right? It's very all enveloping. And so this is Adam HaRishon experiencing something for the first time and not having any perspective of other experiences to tell him otherwise, that this is going to change. So for Adam HaRishon, right, winter is terrifying. It's going to get colder and colder and darker and darker. And who knows, they could just continue like this forever. And in addition to sensitizing us to Adam's gradual realization and his fear, the Bavli also changes the fear, right? Instead of the monsters, the snake gonna bite him in the dark, it's about the darkness itself. He thinks that darkness means the world is going back to tohu vavohu, that the world itself is falling apart, and that he's the cause. Which is also interesting developmentally, like that children will often internalize, right? Like, oh, like I must have done something when their outside, situation has nothing to do with them. And they'll be like, oh, it must be me. I did. Okay, I don't know, Jeremy, if you have experience with this with children in your life. But yeah, he thinks that the world's being destroyed, right? He thinks it's because of something he did, and he has no idea how he's going to fix it, right? So it feels catastrophic. And even as adults, we can catastrophize things, right? Like, I have no idea how to fix this, right? Like, I messed something up at work, I messed something up at school, I got in a fight with my friend, and I have no idea, this is never gonna get better, right? They're gonna hate me forever. I'm sure we've all been there at some point. And so Adam does the only thing he knows how to do. He reacts in grief, right? He sits, he fasts, he's praying, and he's waiting for the world to end. And then something changes, and he looks up, and the light's getting longer, and he goes, okay, this is the way of the world. And that seems like a natural response, right? He didn't know about seasons, and now he does. And so the next year he can make a calendar, and he figured out what to do, and he won't be as afraid. But compared to the Yerushalmi, his response is kind of strange. Like we said, it's almost less religious, right? The Yerushalmi's response, Adam HaRishon says, Kalandio, like praise to God. And it seems that would be a response that, I don't know, a religious person would make, right? Oh, thank God, right? Everything's going to be okay. I thought the world was going to end, and it's not. But the thing is, right, even though Adam has this surprising response of this is the way nature works, that's not the only response that he has, right? He makes the two festivals, right? So the two festivals on either side of the solstice, one 8 days leading towards the solstice, and then the 8 day where he fasted, right? Commemorating the time he fasted. And then the 8 days when it gets lighter. So, and he's sure that the world's going to return to the way that it used to be. He sanctifies the 8 days when the light begins to grow, and the light is coming back into the world. So what is so embedded in Adam's understanding of the cycle that makes it idolatrous or close to idolatrous for the rabbis, right? Why are they so afraid of this being idolatrous? So if we stay in the natural world, right, this is the way of the world. If you remove yourself from religious thinking and you're like, okay, this is just how I survive. I know I can make a calendar. I can track the days. I know what to do in this situation, and I move on. And you're left with a question. So I understand celebrating the 8 days where it grows, but why do we celebrate the 8 days before? Okay, that's the question we raise. And then for us, what happened to those 8 days? Where's that festival of the fear and the grieving and the fasting? Interesting. And why is there a celebration? Okay, so this is the transition that brings us to another Hanukkah story in the Bavli. If you were listening with a sensitive ear and you've read the sugya about Hanukkah, we have language here of pochet v'holech and lishana acheret that appear in our other story, and we'll take a look right now. I'm going to put you guys to the side of my screen. You guys can still see the screen, yes? Yes. Okay. Okay, my Hanukkah. Talmud Bavli, Masachet Shabbat. Why does my Hanukkah appear, the sugya about Hanukkah appear in Masachet Shabbat? Fun trivia that someone knows. Someone here knows.
I think that's the place in the Mishnah where it's mentioned.
Yeah, okay, well, why would the Gemara's discussion of Hanukkah appear in a section about Shabbat? In Bame Madliken. It's a good hint.
Because we have to discuss which oil we can use.
Okay, oil, lighting. It's a great
What
place to
order
discuss.
you?
Yeah. What order you would do if it, Shabbos, Hanukkah, yeah, that kind of, right? But the candle lighting, that's why it's here. Okay, fun, right? The rabbis are creative like that, right? It's not, right? Hanukkah is not Mishnah. So here's our discussion in the Gemara that's embedded here in the candle lighting sugya. Tana Rabbanan, mitzvah Chanukah ner ishu beito. Our rabbis taught the precept of Hanukkah demands that one light for the person and their household. The zealous v'mahadrin ner l'kol echad. Every person in the household gets one candle per night. V'mahadrin mina mahadrin. Beit Shammai omrim yom rishon madlik shmona mikan ve'elach pochet ve'holech. Okay, we're noticing this language of pochet ve'holech. We got it. We have the connection. Okay. In Beit Shammai's opinion, we do a descending order of candles, right? Descending amount of light. We're celebrating the decrease in the light. Okay, here is our our holiday that disappeared in Beit Shammai's opinion. Light 8, then 7, then 6, then 5, and 4. Ubeit Hillel omrim yom rishon madlik echad mikan ve'elach mosif ve'holech, and that's the way we practice. On the first day we light 1, then 2 on the second, 3 on the third, etc. And that's how we in fact do. My Hanukkah, the Tana Rabbanan. What is Hanukkah? We taught in the Breita on the 25th of Kislev. Yomei Hanukkah, Tamanya Inun. There are 8 days of Hanukkah. The Lula Mispad Bahom, the Loli Tanot Bahom, that you can't have eulogies or fasting. Why? The Greeks went into the temple and contaminated all of the oil. And when the Hashmonaim became powerful and came into political power, they only found the one little cod, the one little jug of oil, that was still left with a seal intact from the Kohen Gadol. There was only enough to light one day. We all know this. The miracle is that it lasted for 8 days instead of 1. And in the next year, they established these days as a holiday, as Yamim Tovim, with Hallel and Thanksgiving, Hallel and Hodah. Okay, so those are our linguistic links to our sugya, from our sugya of Adam HaRishon's primordial Hanukkah and our Hanukkah. We have Pochet ve'holech, which is, right, that opinion that disappeared, that holiday that disappeared resurfaces in Beit Shammai's opinion of how to light candles. And we have Kava'um, right, that Lishon Acher, next year establishing it as a holiday. Okay, why do we have these links? Why do we link the two stories? And with this, we're going to wrap up. Okay, so what we have here is a retelling of the Adam HaRishon story. It's a story where there is not enough light, right, in the story of the Beit HaMikdash and the story of Hanukkah, where each day we're watching and waiting for the light to go out, because we've done the calculation and we know there's not enough light to last, right, between the Hanukkah oil and there's only enough for one day. There's not enough oil to last, not enough light to last. And we're watching and we're waiting. And then, against all possibility, against what we know will happen, the light, and we sanctify that, right? We make them into a Yom Tov. We create a festival. This time, though, in the Hanukkah story of my Hanukkah, there's no room for saying, oh, this is minhago shel olam. This is the way of the world, like Adam HaRishon does, and kind of mixes it together with a celebration of God and a miracle. This is just a supernatural occurrence, right? And there's no room for saying this is just the way it works. So this supernatural retelling of the story is a supernatural retelling of what winter actually is, of what the changes in the seasons actually are, right? That this is the winter experience framed in a way that tells us, to remind us, there's nothing intuitive about the fact that there actually will be more light in the world once the days start to get shorter, right? That's Adam HaRishon's experience. That's not what we expect. There's nothing intuitive. It's a phenomenon that is being made sacred and celebrated as a miracle, right? It's kind of reawakening the curiosity, the naivete, but also the wonder at the changing of the seasons, the miraculous way that nature does work and that the world does not end, and God has created these cycles and God is involved in that in a way that we might not have thought logically as a person experiencing it for the first time through the eyes of Adam HaRishon. So once again, it's an 8-day festival, but this time there's two aspects that intertwined in it together. So we're reminded there of the two very different ways that the Gemara imagines celebrating Hanukkah. One like Beit Shammai, right, celebrating the diminishing of the light, and one like Beit Hillel that ritualizes the fact that after the light begins to grow again, that's when we celebrate. So as modern people, like Adam HaRishon, we know how nature works. We've seen this before. We have the calendar. But the links between these stories, the way that the Bavli reworks it to help us understand that this is the universal feeling in winter, and Adam HaRishon's natural response interplayed with Hanukkah. So that intertextual connection reminds us to keep alive that consciousness of what actually is miraculous here, right? That even the patterns of nature that we're reacting to, that all the cultures tend to react to, right? We have to, as Jews, right, we step back, we make it as a holiday for God, and we say, actually, this too is miraculous, not to lose that sense of wonder, not to only leave it at, this is the way of the world, right? This is a frightening experience that happens every year, doesn't turn out the way it might. It's a miracle every time. And that's the interplay of these three stories of HaRishon and Primordial Hanukkah. Thoughts, reactions. I'm going to stop share. We're looking today. Thoughts on this intertextual reading?
So one thing that I was sort of expecting to hear, and I guess I didn't hear, is just like the, I learned somewhere, I don't remember where, that most Jewish holidays, even the ones that began as celebrating a natural occurrence, ended up celebrating a moment in history. And it's interesting to me that even though this is meant to refer to a miracle, we don't get a lot of talk about the historical occurrence, or like the supposedly historical occurrence. It's like we are talking about a miracle.
We have the sugya of my Hanukkah, right? We have the sugya in the Gemara and Shabbat that talks about my Hanukkah. You mean like outside of that? We only have
no, I mean like even in that sugya, it seems like it's just not lingering over the historical occurrence. It's like it's just like it's telling us more about like, I mean I like your intertextuality, but it seems like it's drawing us directly from natural occurrence to miraculous occurrence. At least that was what I was getting from the way you were putting the text together.
Is that problematic, or does that problematize it for you, or?
No, I just thought it was really interesting.
Oh, great. Shkoy. Okay. Any last comments, thoughts? Well, thank you all for joining. Look forward to a next series on, I will teach Agadah whenever and however I'm allowed to, and given the forum to. So look forward to other Beit Midrash Wednesday series in the works.